His name is Barack Obama, and tonight, how the man from Illinois put together his decisive, historic victory and what lies ahead. The new First Lady, the woman behind the man who will be president. America gets to know Michelle Obama. Taking it in. Yesterday, voters made history. Today, across the country, Americans take stock as a new political era begins. Power failure. Sarah Palin and the Republicans pick up the pieces and start thinking about what next. And living the dream, America's long march toward racial justice and reconciliation takes a giant step forward. Tom Brokaw takes a look at a moment in history. Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News election headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. The 44th President of the United States will be named Barack Obama. This is a different nation than it was at this time just last night, and American history won't be the same again. There was a shift in American politics last night, the kind that takes place once in a great while. People celebrated in the streets in different cities in this country and overseas. Americans elected a young man with a young family, an African American, the first ever. And now that we've seen the numbers and who voted and why, it's clear our nation is headed in a different direction. Here's the electoral map. You'll recall the president-elect needed that number of 270. He got it handily, beating John McCain 349-173. It was called an electoral landslide. Only North Carolina remains too close to call. Turnout was a record, 133 million Americans. Obama won 52% to 46%. The U.S. Senate now stands at 54 Democrats, 40 Republicans, 2 independents. That's a net gain of 5 for the Democrats, with races in 4 states still too close to call. Minnesota, Oregon, Georgia, and Alaska, all GOP incumbents in those races. Our team is once again in place after a long night. Lee Cowan, of course, who had been covering the Obama campaign, is these days covering the transition for the president-elect in Chicago. Lee, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. Barack Obama's administration is already starting to take shape. The Democratic congressman from Illinois, Rahm Emanuel, has been offered the chief of staff spot in that administration, although he hasn't accepted it yet. As for Barack Obama himself, he spent a very rare day out of the limelight, staying as far away from the cameras as he could.
It was immersion in seclusion, or so it seemed, for the most photographed, most talked about, most sought after man in the world, who appeared in public only briefly today. As his victory soaked in, the words he spoke last night took root.
It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
From coast to coast last night, in barbershops and bars, his supporters had huddled around big screen TVs. But it was Grant Park, in Obama's hometown of Chicago, where the cheers were the loudest. 250,000 people, many moved to tears.
The power is with the people, and he stood for the people, and he connected with us.
They were everyone, the not-so-famous and the famous. Jesse Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, who could barely contain herself today on her show. But Obama acknowledged not everyone is on his side.
And to those Americans whose support I have yet to earn, I may not have won your vote tonight, but I hear your voices. I need your help, and I will be your president too.
Obama made history not because of his race, but in spite of it. And as reaction poured in from the White House on down, it was that factor cited most of all.
This moment is especially uplifting for a generation of Americans who witnessed the struggle for civil rights with their own eyes. And 4 decades later, see a dream fulfilled.
As an African American, I'm especially proud because this is a country that's been through a long journey in terms of overcoming wounds and making race not the factor in our lives.
His rival, John McCain, was gracious in conceding, citing the historic nature of Obama's candidacy, pledging to bridge any differences and find common ground.
These are difficult times for our country, and I pledge to him tonight to do all in my power to help him lead us through the many challenges we face.
Now, what stood out of all the promises he made last night, Brian, is this one, the fact that not everything is going to happen right away. He said the challenges facing his administration present a steep climb, as he put it, and he warned voters last night that there are a host of problems that may not be solved even by the end of his first term. Brian.
Lee Cowan in Chicago, thanks. After an incredible night in this nation's history. And of course, by looking at the numbers, we now know a lot more about what happened last night and why. And here with us, as he was all night and all morning this morning, our political director, Chuck Todd. What have you found?
Well, first of all, he flipped 9 states. Okay, 9 states that President Bush carried, and you can group them in pairs, in threes, to know which demographic group he improved in. Start out west. You know he did better with Hispanics. That's why he carried Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico. You go down south, and assuming trend lines hold in North Carolina, he will have flipped Florida, North Carolina, and Virginia. That tells you shows you the increase in African Americans and actually in young voter turnout. And then, of course, the issue of the economy. You don't flip Indiana, Iowa, and Ohio as easily and lock in the Rust Belt without the economy flipping that in that way. And then what was everywhere in all of these states was how the suburban vote has now shifted from what was a lean Republican vote just 20 years ago, places like New Jersey, is now becoming a locked-in part of the Democratic coalition.
And in Congress, a very tough night for the Republicans, not the total titanic bloodbath that some had predicted.
The phrase is, it could have been worse. That's their mantra. It looks like it might be no more than 20 House seats. The Senate seats, we got Al Franken in a runoff, in a recount. We won't know till December. Alaska, if Ted Stevens wins, he gets thrown out, and then there's all sorts of shenanigans there. A runoff in Georgia seems very likely now. And Oregon, Democrats feel the best about picking up 1 more seat there.
All right, Chuck Todd, glad you were here with us last night and tonight. We'll keep looking at it.
What a night.
Yeah, what a night
we'll
it was.
Unbuild it for a long time.
That's right. Now begins, of course, the hard work, the transition of the machinery of government being handed over after 8 years of the Bush administration to this new president. He now has 76 days to start a new government, prepare for inauguration. That story tonight from NBC's Andrea Mitchell.
An historic win.
Yes, we did!
Raising big expectations in Washington. Now the hard part, delivering on that promise. Joe Biden in Chicago today was asked if he had talked to the president-elect about his role. Biden is expected to be a key player on foreign policy. Obama's aides have studied transitions that worked, Ronald Reagan's, and those that didn't, Bill Clinton's.
Bill Clinton will tell you that he made a huge mistake in concentrating on appointing his cabinet and delaying the appointment of his staff until a few days before the inauguration.
That's why advisors say Obama wants his good friend, Chicago Congressman Rahm Emanuel, a hard-nosed White House veteran, to be his chief of staff.
He knows policy very well. He knows politics. He knows how the Hill works. He has been in the White House before. I just think he would be an excellent choice.
Obama may also announce an economic team this week. He's getting advice from former Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin, former Fed Chairman Paul Volcker, and Warren Buffett, among others. He's considered former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers for Treasury. Also highly regarded, New York Fed President Tim Geithner and J.P. Morgan Chase Chairman James Dimon.
And today, the CIA announced that until the inauguration, it will serve 2 consumers, the president and the president-elect. CIA Director Michael Hayden said Barack Obama will now see the full range of capabilities we deploy for the United States.
Still, transitions can be dangerous.
We can't guarantee against bad things happening, but again, this is about making sure that we are extra focused during a period of change, which is naturally one in which sometimes there's an element of distraction.
So for the first time, 100 officials from both the Obama and McCain campaigns were given security clearances before the election, just in case they won. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
This nation woke up this morning changed. As one columnist put it, America matured in 2008 by choosing Barack Obama. Tonight, NBC's Kevin Tibbles takes stock of a new day.
Sun up and sunny side up in Chicago's Hyde Park.
Scrambled eggs, sausage, and potatoes. That's Obama breakfast.
At the president-elect's favorite diner, they were giving it away.
This is a wonderful day for the world.
Fantastic. Not far from Obama's home, it's celebration time.
He's our president and he's our neighbor, so he's from the neighborhood.
History in the making, first African-American president in the United States is beautiful. It's very, very beautiful.
Outside, a carnival atmosphere with freshly minted T-shirts for sale.
This is great. Barack Obama.
And on this, the day after, people are lining up for their own piece of history. Barack Obama, Mr. President. The first edition of the Chicago papers sold out immediately, so they simply waited for more.
And I know what my grandparents and great-grandparents really witnessed and really went through. So it means a lot.
Headlines selling like hotcakes from coast to coast. In Detroit, the owner of this gas station spent $70,000 to switch his station's name to Obama.
To show the people, if you want to change, there's no limit.
And on a balmy November day in Minneapolis, it's a family affair.
I'm equally as happy that we get Michelle Obama to be First Lady as that we get Barack Obama to be President. I think she rocks.
But not everyone's overjoyed.
I'm afraid it's going to change the Supreme Court, do a lot of things that us conservatives would rather do the other way.
Ann Nixon Cooper is 106 years old.
Last night, Barack Obama spoke of a remarkable centenarian in Atlanta.
I never expected it during my lifetime.
Now, Ann Nixon Cooper is living another piece of history as Barack Obama is elected the next American president. Kevin Tibbles, NBC News, Chicago.
And when Nightly News continues on this night after this Wednesday evening, Sarah Palin goes home to Alaska, but will she be back tonight? What she says about last night's loss and the future. And later, Tom Brokaw on what last night's victory means to the struggle, its past leaders, and the new president-elect. We're back in this presidential campaign we kept hearing was all about change, which is exactly what John McCain and Sarah Palin woke up facing today. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell, who's been covering the McCain campaign from the very start, looks at what the day after is like when you've lost a national election and what might lie ahead for the Alaska governor.
The day after, the campaign trappings are gone. Before noon, John McCain was driving himself from Phoenix to Sedona. Secret Service protection had ended at 6 this morning. One campaign packs up.
I thought a great guy ran a great, tough, honorable campaign.
And the what-ifs begin for Governor Sarah Palin, who heads back to Wasilla today. Is there a presidential campaign in her future?
Can't wait to get back to work for the people of Alaska. And the people
At her Phoenix hotel, Palin said the economy was to blame for the loss far more than anything she did.
If I cost John McCain even one vote, I am sorry about that, because John McCain, I believe, is the American hero.
But in defeat, more negative whispers. Newsweek magazine had inside access for a book and reports that a senior campaign aide claimed Palin was more directly involved in the high-end shopping spree for campaign clothes, spending tens of thousands more than has been acknowledged. Today, the governor denied causing tensions.
We laugh about that criticism, and if only people, come on up and travel with us to Alaska and see this diva lifestyle that I supposedly live or would demand, because that's just false. But again, I'm not going to participate in any of the negativity.
During his concession speech, McCain hinted at a political future for Palin.
One of the best campaigners I have ever seen, and an impressive new voice in our party.
2012 seeming a long way off today.
Palin was careful to say she couldn't imagine a run in 2012 now because of the newness of this defeat. But she didn't rule anything out, and that leaves the door open. Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News, Phoenix.
Stunning news today that best-selling author Michael Crichton has died in Los Angeles, as family says, after a private battle with cancer. The 66-year-old Crichton wrote the blockbuster novels Jurassic Park and The Andromeda Strain. He also created the hit medical drama ER, which, as you may know, is now in its 14th season here on NBC. When we come back here tonight, we'll look at the next First Lady of the United States. We are back, and now Americans, of course, after last night's results, begin to get to know a new first family, the Obamas, the children, daughters Malia and Sasha. their father, the president-elect, and Michelle Obama, the nation's new first lady. She is a strong partner whose husband must now deal with 2 wars and an economic crisis. Tonight, Ann Curry reports on Barack Obama's anchor in this storm.
And I would not be standing here tonight without the unyielding support of my best friend for the last 16 years, the rock of our family, the love of my life, the nation's next First Lady, Michelle Obama.
A groundbreaking future First Lady, she is her own Horatio Alger story, a woman who rose on a scholarship to become a Harvard-educated lawyer from a hardworking family on Chicago's tough South Side.
Growing up, our family did what normal families do. So when there is, we used humor to get by a lot of situations.
Well, I'm preaching to the choir.
That resilience is one of her strengths as a political wife.
How many silver spoons in your mouth?
We had 4 spoons.
So that tag still sticks.
And then my father got a raise at the plant, and we had 5 spoons.
Once the breadwinner in their marriage, she's struggled with the work-family balance and is now setting women's issues among her priorities as First Lady, along with national service and the plight of military families.
I just try to let people get a sense of the real me as much as possible. So I just try to let go and speak from the heart.
There's an enormous inner strength in this woman, and I think it matches his inner strength. There's a serenity there that I think both of them share in their relationship and their confidence in themselves.
But her biggest job may be keeping life as normal as possible for daughters Malia and Sasha, and helping her husband keep all his promises.
You have earned the new puppy that's coming with us to the White House.
And Barack and I were raised with so many of the same values. Like, you work hard for what you want in life, that your word is your bond, that you do what you say you're going to do.
A promise on which America's future now rests. Ann Curry, NBC News, New York.
And we're back in a moment with Tom Brokaw and an American dream coming true. A whole lot of Americans saw last night's vote as proof that the content of a candidate's character and the high hopes in his ability to fix this nation's problems won out over the color of his skin. So tonight, Tom Brokaw takes a look at the struggle several decades long that led in large part to what happened last night.
I have a dream. It began with a dream. That speech and the man who delivered it launched a crusade in America, a crusade met by lethal violence in the streets and dark of night, and resistance in the Congress. But the dream did not die, and the cause was too great to ignore, even for a president from deep and segregated Texas.
And we shall overcome.
The movement kept moving on, even when its great defining voice was stilled by gunshot. Slowly but steadily, with the help of law and attitude, America was liberated from its racist legacy. The movement's leaders moved on up. John Lewis, beaten and jailed as a lieutenant of Dr. King, is now a senior and influential congressman.
Oh, if Martin Luther King Jr. could say anything today, and I think he's looking down on all of us, he would just say, hallelujah, hallelujah. He'd be very proud of the distance that we've come.
At Dr. King's alma mater, Morehouse College, new possibilities for a younger generation.
When I was growing up, you used to clown around saying, hey, maybe I can be president, but you never actually thought it could be true. Now you can actually see someone that sort of looks like you being in a position that you could possibly one day be in, and it opens up a whole new world to you.
And a whole new world as well for students in New York's famed Harlem neighborhood, a role model unlike any they've seen before.
You think to yourself, I could be president someday?
He was the first African-American president, so if he can do it, then I think that I can do it.
So I feel like he's opening doors for me to challenge myself more.
But do these young African-Americans know what a long, hard road this has been? Andrew Young, Dr. King's young assistant, traveled that road and became the UN ambassador, Atlanta's mayor, and a congressman.
Did you expect there would be more racism in this presidential campaign or less?
I expected a lot more. And it was one of the reasons I was slow in my support. But I underestimated white America. And I haven't overcome completely the scars that I bear, but I had fewer of them. But Barack Obama did not have to grow up with those scars.
And Dr. King's sister, Christine King Ferris, hears her brother's voice in this election.
I know that my brother is smiling, and 'cause this is what he was all about. You know, when the night before he was taken, he said, I may not get there with you, but we as a people
will get to the promised land.
So this is like the promised land for us through Mr. Obama.
Tom Brokaw on the dream and the promise. A final note here, depending on where you're watching us tonight, some of our NBC stations will continue here with us for the next half hour in this special edition of Nightly News. If you don't get to see us, the second half of this broadcast, along with a whole lot of our political and election coverage, will be available tonight, as always, on our website at nightly.msnbc.com. So for some of you, we'll be right back. We hope to see all of you, of course, back here tomorrow night.